All right. So when we last left off, we were in Forma, and everybody started making their own proposals, bringing their site back into Revit, making sure everything's linked up correctly, then bringing your building back out to Forma in your own unique proposal. So here we have Stephen copy. I think there's also a Stephen copy. There might even be a Stephen somewhere, but let's go to Stephen copy. There we go. Yeah. Yep, there we go. This is some weird wide dude right here. All right, so if I go, it looks like you've already done the wind analysis, and if I go to history, I can drill down in and see what it did while you were asleep or doing studio and that kind of stuff, right? You can see that you actually got a more granular wind analysis, and then it's also dependent on which direction I'm looking. So if I would look at the two sort of prevailing winds, the north wind and the southwest wind, I can begin to get more granular details on how, when it comes to velocity, temperature of the wind, and therefore comfort. I can also turn on the flow lines, which I think is really kind of nice. This kind of analysis used to take days, or at the minimum hours. Now it only takes like a minute, and it's on someone else's server, right? So we can begin to understand and get these things. What I want to make sure is that you can come back here. Because towards the end, I'm going to have you just simply come back and start taking images from this and uploading them, right? Just sort of, again, it's the sort of process of making sure that you're sort of going through all the motions. You understand how to go back and forth between Revit and Forma. You understand how to run some of that environmental analysis in Forma, okay? So I haven't made an assignment yet, but later on I will make an assignment saying, go ahead and upload, the 6 or 7 PNGs from Forma that you think really tell the story of my site and how I'm reacting to it, okay? And it's really quite easy. You can, format these the same or leave them, sort of find a vantage point, start to change the metrics, and then basically take out PNG files as you go, right, with that little camera icon. Okay? So again, when it comes to both site analysis and then environmental analysis, as you start to make design decisions, these tools sort of just work now, which is kind of handy. Okay, so don't throw away anything, right? Because the other thing we're going to do today is we're going to go back into Grasshopper and Rhino, and we're going to basically apply your shading components from Project 2 grid shells to your Project 3 south facade, right? We'll talk about how to bring Revit into Rhino, then how to do some things in Rhino, manage the layers, bring things from Rhino back into Revit. And the workflow is not intuitive, so that's why I want to show this, right? There might be other ways that we could sort of shade that south face with the wall system and roof system that we already have, but I want to show and go through the motions with you so you have that workflow, how to go back and forth between Revit and Rhino. Really important if you want to use either or. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close Forma for now. We'll return to that later. But suffice to say, you have all of these graphics now you can start to look at, publish, and eventually I'll ask you for those. But again, today's post, 4 different files for you to download, right? We'll get started here in just a second. I just want to show you, once you download them, I'll just show you my documents folder, right? I don't leave things in the downloads if they're important. I go into the documents folder, and you'll see that what I have right here is a folder called Revit Assets. I recommend you guys do something similar, right? In other words, you keep all of the sort of Revit families that you download. Let's say you're working on office project, corporate HQ or something like my studio, right? You can go to Steelcase or Herman Miller or Hayworth and Knoll and download all of their Revit families, right? And then load them in, and you can start designing and lay out the furniture, right? So it's not uncommon for you to sort of not necessarily rely on all just generic templates that are already loaded into Autodesk Revit, but to go out and make your own or download them, right? I've made this one for you. It's called Desert Modern Window Plate Trim, and it's .rfa, right? And I've put that in my Revit's Assets folder. And then the other 3 files I need you to download, I put them in a little templates folder. And these are called view templates. What you'll see is that all these do is have settings for Revit to format your drawings, right? So for plans, sections, elevations, and axons, you'll see that there's a color scheme, that certain things are opaque, certain things are on, has different line weights and different textures. So what we can do is we can actually pull those in apply them drawing by drawing, which is what we'll do at the end today. Okay? So I've placed this RFA file where I know it's going to be for all eternity while I'm working on this project. I made a Revit asset folder, and then from there I'm ready to bring it into Revit. All right, so let me go ahead and open up my Revit file. And we're going to start placing some windows in this bad boy. Hot damn, aren't you guys excited about that? Yeah, you should be, man. It's pretty cool. All right. So first, I'm going to take just a little bit of time to show you guys how you can get under the hood and start to play around with different types and different families, right? So if you think about Revit, there's a sort of hierarchy of components. So whenever we go to architecture and we go to walls or doors or columns or roofs or floors, right? Those are examples of different types of families, right? So within the floor family, there's all kinds of different types of floors. Within the wall family, there's all types of walls, etc. Same with windows. And if I go to the Windows family and I look at what we have, if I ignore the Desert Modern Window Plate Trim family that I just made, you can see that they're pretty pedestrian. I mean, they're pretty lousy, right? Like, they look like the windows you buy at Lowe's or Pella or something like that and put on a tract house, right? Like they look hokey. They don't look like they're made for commercial use. In fact, what you can do is you can create your own. So this is what I've done. I've created my own. It's basically a sort of knife edge plate trim, right, that projects outwards like we love to do in the desert, particularly, if we can use steel or even Corten steel, something that naturally weathers. And then we have just a nice little pane of glass inside. And so you can see that I've made several different size types. We can also begin to change those around as we go. So if I want to load this family in, right, all you have to do, let me just undo this stuff, is go to Insert tab, and then you can say Load Family, right? So this is different from Load Autodesk Family. Load Autodesk Family will then take you to a directory inside your Autodesk settings where you have a bunch of preloaded things. That's where you can find things like elevators, elevator doors, other things that maybe aren't loaded in the template, but you can load them in as needed. But the Load Family is something, I'm taking a third party or creating my own family, and I need to load it in, right? So Load Family, and I think by no surprise, it's going to ask you where it's at. And so I'm going to go to my Documents folder, to my Revit assets, and point it right here to that, right? Once I do that, it's going to load it in, right? So now I've loaded it in. Because this is based off of the window family, you'll be able to see it now as one of the options when you go to Architecture Window. So as soon as I do this, it might give you a couple of, like, are you sure? Do you want to overwrite? Do you want to save into the file, etc.? Go ahead and hit OK. But then once that's done, you go to Architecture, and you go to Window, and now these are one of the options for you in the Windows family. Now, while everybody's going through that, if you've already done that, just take a look, right? So if I simply go to one of these windows that I placed, right? Here's here's like a grid of them. I was thinking on the east side, what if I made like a series of apertures and then I had these sort of volumetric light rays come in the morning, right? It'd be really kind of beautiful, before the day gets too warm or anything. Whereas on the west side, I was thinking more along the lines of just framing one particular view out towards Mary Jane Falls, and with this sort of really interesting vertical window or something like that, right? Just sort of framing ground, ridge, sky, and just sort of giving you a nice slice section. All right, so, but if I go ahead and select one of these, I can, up here, maybe you've noticed this option, I can edit a family, right? So I'm not saying that you have to do this, but I'm just showing you if you wanted to get under the hood, and you start to get good at this, you can go ahead and start to make your own windows, doors, etc. And so what that does is it brings up this view of, it's a 3D view, of my window type. And as I start to select things, you can see that I have different settings here. And if I go to right here, family types, you can see that I have different parameters. So I actually made certain parameters, new ones, trim extension, trim thickness, etc., and then began to give those both default settings as well as make them variable, so you can begin to change them at the instance level. All right. So well, all of that just to say, when I have this window now, right, I've actually made it editable at the instance. You can change the height, you can change the width, you can change the trim extension, and the trim thickness. Let me just show you how that works. Again, the spirit of this project is that you're going to make very, very, very careful and limited openings on the east and west side, because that's where you start to get eye-level light, and particularly in the west side, you start to get a lot of hot light, right? If you get direct light in, then it strikes surfaces. A substantial portion of it gets changed to heat, right? And then that becomes internal heat gain, which is something that you don't want to do, it's particularly in the desert so much, right? So, but if I change this, let's see, I can always change, let's say the width. Right now it's 6 feet. That's a pretty good sized window, isn't it? 24 by 6. But if I change it to 4, I can get it to update. I can always change, let's just make it maybe wider for a second. I can always change the extension. Let's make it, this is ridiculous, but 3.5 feet, right? And then the trim width, thickness, let's see, let's make it 3 inches, right? So you can begin to sort of play around with these windows. Not that I think that that's a great window, but it is what it is, okay? And so I would encourage you to place at least one on the east and one on the west, right? But again, think about it as a sort of compositional problem, right? How does it look good on the outside? But then also, what are you framing on your inside? So if you've been to like Lyman Spaces, they're the firm out of Tucson that did the visitor center at Red Rock. Anybody been out to the visitor center at Red Rock lately? You have those nice horizontal vista views, right? That's the kind of window I'm looking for, right? Something that's not about letting a bunch of unhindered light, but about framing a particular view, right? Doing it carefully and precisely, right? So go ahead and do that if you'd like, okay? But that's how we start to look at windows and types, right? Families and types. So again, I will maybe point this out if you're jotting things down here at all. Here's a really good tutorial on it, and yeah, Arc It Easy. That's a good YouTube account. He shows a lot of interesting ways you can start to customize the puppy out of Revit. I don't know what this commercial's doing, but apparently we all need Liberty Mutual insurance or something. Come on now. But suffice to say, this is a pretty good way you can start to see how you can get under the hood, start to change some things around, add parameters, govern things by parameters. Let's skip this stupid ad, right? And it's a pretty thorough how-to, in this case, for these windows, right? So again, it's not necessarily to me, as intuitive, right? But once you start to see under the hood how it's done, you go, oh, okay. So that's how you make a new parameter, and that's how you tie things in. I get it, right? So you can always look for these things, and again, start to make these tools work for you instead of the other way around. Okay. So feel free to add windows to the east and west side the way you want. I'm not sure I'm really fond of this grid layout, but it is what it is. And we'll actually be able to test it later on in Twin Motion later this week and then next week. Right, we can start to add a little bit of fog atmospherics and see if those light rays actually come through in the morning time at certain times of the year. All right. Take a minute or two and think about windows. The next step that we're going to do is we're going to bring this model, we'll export it out as a DWG, we'll bring it into Rhino. That way we can very precisely start to craft a simulation of our south facade, apply our Grasshopper component definition to it, bake things in, delete all the Revit stuff away, just save our Rhino file and show you how to go back from Rhino into Revit, okay? Kind of a weird way of doing this, but what you can see is that when I take off that scope box, I have a huge site, right? Like it's like almost like a kilometer by kilometer or something, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the Revit model into Rhino so I can start to model in Rhino right in place. And so when I bring things back from Rhino into Revit, it should be in the right place, right? Otherwise, it might be a kilometer away and I can't find it, right, when I bring it into Revit, right? So a couple of things here. One is, here's that south face. Nope, there, that's the north face. Here, let's go to the south face. And I'm just going to zoom in here. You remember I pulled this out and then extended it to between the walls and the roof and the floor in order to sort of disengage and therefore not collide with structure and slab, right? But when I select this wall, I can go to these properties and I can see exactly how tall it is and exactly how long it is, right? For some reason, I still have an offset here. I'm going to check that offset off. All right, so it should be, it's telling me unconnected height, it would be 48 feet tall. That's not a big surprise. It goes from the finished floor, level 1, all the way up to the bottom of my roof, the top of steel, right? So 48 feet. So I'm going to write that down. I can remember that one pretty easily. And if I drill down a little lower, it's also going to tell me the length of the wall. It's 36 feet and 9.5 inches. That's mine. I don't know what yours is, but mine's 36 feet and 9.5 inches. And I'm going to write that down as well, because that's the size of the surface in Rhino I'm going to make vertically in front view, and then apply my Grasshopper component to it and divide it 6 wide, 6 tall, right? Into columns and rows again, just like we did in Grasshopper before, right? We've done it in Revit as well, right? I have sort of 6, oops. It's hard to see. And this is why I'm going to turn on my scope box here. Get rid of some of this extra superfluous sight that I have going on. Let's turn on that scope box. There we go. Oh yeah, look at that. So good. Okay, let's take a look. Yeah, at our south facade here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, right? So we divided it 6 by 6, right? So we have 6 panels, or basically six glass panels. And now what we're thinking is that hung off of this, the curtain wall mullions would be our shading device, right? You guys ready? This is not intuitive at all. That's why I want to go through it with you guys, right? So go ahead and just pay attention really quickly. Don't bother following along. I can always show you again step by step. But what I'm just going to do is I'm going to say file, export, CAD formats, and I'm going to select DWG. So I'm just going to hold my cursor there really quickly. If you want to take a snapshot, file, export, CAD formats, DWG. We're going to export this bad boy out as an AutoCAD DWG file. And the other thing I'm going to make sure is that I'm in a 3D view. Okay. If I'm not in a 3D view, then let's say I'm in plan view, it's going to export just the plan drawing, right? So if I go into 3D view, then I'm going to get all the sort of 3D model here. Okay, so I'm in the 3D view, file, export, CAD formats, DWG. It's going to open up a settings box, right? Before I hit next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the ... here, and I'm going to change a few export settings. Okay? So I'm going to go to the solids tab, and instead of using polymeshes and converting these to nasty polymeshes, I'm going to say just keep them as SCSI solids, right? Okay, SCSI solids. And if you guys don't know what ACIS means, it's like an old term from DOS, like way back in the 90s. All right, so solids, right? We want to make sure they're solids. Then when we bring them in, they'll actually be closed solid poly surfaces, right, in Rhino, not meshes with a bunch of triangles and vertices. And then we go to units, and I want to make sure that our DWG unit is set to feet. Okay, so I'm just going to cancel. If you guys want to follow along now, file, export, CAD format, DWG. Short for drawing. Way back. Remember the AutoCAD 4 days? That was great. DWGs. All right. Then when it brings up, it's going to bring up this box. I hit that ... I'm going to go to solids. Let's turn it to SCSI solids, units. Let's go to feet. Let's hit OK. And now I can say next. Right? Now it's going to say, okay, what do you want to name this new DWG file with SCSI solids you're making? It's so great, it's in feet and everything. And where do you want to save it, right? So I'm just going to, in this case, I'll just save it to my desktop or something. And I'll call this Revit to Rhino Test 01. I'll just do that, just so I can remember what it is. All right. Look at that. And let's see. I'll go ahead and minimize that for a moment, and I'm just going to go ahead and open up Rhino, right? Okay, so we should have a DWG. Now we're just going to import that DWG into Rhino. The reason I'm doing this, again, I have a very vast site. If I just simply make a model in Rhino and import it into Revit, it might be off in space somewhere. I don't know, miles away for all I know, right? So I'm going to bring in the Revit model into Rhino so I can model this thing in Rhino in place. So when I leave it there, I delete all the Revit stuff away, bring the Rhino into Revit, it should be in the right place, okay? Okay, so anyway, it's just weird sort of like circular argument here, but it is what it is. So file, in Rhino, file, import. I'll just go ahead and import. You can see all the different supported files that Rhino does. It's a great import-export tool. Let's just set it to DWG. And the desktop, and let's say Revit to Rhino test 01. That's when I made it 1021. That looks perfect. Okay. And it says, are the model units in inches? No. Okay, so wait. I made a new Rhino file. I didn't set the units very carefully, did I? So I'm going to hit cancel. I'm going to say file, new. And I'm going to go large objects, feet. I'm going to make sure that it's set to feet. I'm going to make a new file, feet in inches. That looks good enough. Yeah, all right. Now I'll go ahead and do the file import. Always important, check those units. And before you start moving data around. Otherwise you start to, change the scale by things by a factor of 12 or 144. It's terrible. All right, so Revit's Rhino test, let's do that. It says the model units are feet. Are you all right with that? Heck yeah, I am. So I'm just going to leave this as default now and hit OK. Every time you import and export, usually you'll get a set of settings, right? And oftentimes you have to sort of look at those carefully and tweak them, make sure that you're giving it the right instructions here. All right, you can see that I have all of these layers that came in, right? These correspond to typical sort of DWG layers for AutoCAD formatting. You have like architecture, civil, etc., AC, and then you have different families like wall versus glazing versus roof, topo versus blah, 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 right? So anyway, columns, beams, that's S for structural, right? Okay, look at that. That's so good. All right, so now what I need to do, I need to make a surface in Rhino that matches that top facade. Right? And I know exactly what size it should be. It's 36 feet and 9.5 inches long. That's what I noted up from Revit. And 48 feet tall, right? So first I'm going to just go into the front view and make a surface that's exactly that size because it's really easy to simply draft that out, right? Let's go over here, and I'm just going to say let's make a surface from 4 points, right? Okay, so I'm just going to make it off into space here. Just click the first point, and then this thing needs to be 36 feet, and then 9-1/2 inches. See how I'm just typing that in really quickly? 36 feet, 9-1/2 inches. As one does, and hit enter. Right. Okay. Now the next one's going to be 48 feet. 48 feet. Enter. Now I need to click it, and then 36 feet, 9-1/2 inches. Ah, perfect. Right. There's my surface. And now I just need to place it into place. Then I need to open up my Grasshopper file. Need to reference this in, set one surface, right? And then change those parameters so it's divided 6 rows, 6 columns. Okay, so you can see kind of where this is going. Yeah, but again, it's always good just to make sure that you're keeping everything systematically in place here. So I'm going to go ahead and click this using the move command. I'm going to try to move it and snap it right there, and then it looks like it's inside. I'm just going to pull it out just a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Using the gumball tool, just pull it out just a bit. Right, I just want it to be close. I might move it around a little bit more in Revit after I've imported everything back into Revit, right? So, but it's close. It's pretty darn close. All right. Open up Grasshopper. Oh, yes. can hardly wait. This is where it all comes together, everything you've done over the last semester. File, let's go to recent files. Oh, there's that good old folded prototype file. You know, I don't need to unroll these. I don't need to label them. I'm not laser cutting anything this time. So I'll just say, let's say disable. You know, I'll just come down here and select all these things for the labels and the grids. I don't need any of that. I'm just going to say disable. But really, here's what I need. I need to go back to that surface widget at the very beginning, say set one surface. Now let's give it this nice planar surface that's 48 feet tall and 36 feet by 9.5 inches long. There we go. And then I think right now it's also dividing it 10 by 10. Let's change that. Let's to 6 and 6. And then it's projecting them 1 foot, -1 foot in direction. I'm just going to change that to positive since it looks like it's going in the wrong direction. There we go. And now I'm looking at that depth. Now we're at 1.5 feet. Maybe I'll just double click and make that 2 feet. 2 feet deep. Yeah, that's looking pretty good, right? I mean, let me just expand that perspective view. Right? But hey, not too shabby, I don't think. You know, look at that. Like peanut butter and chocolate. Yeah. All right. You guys ready? And again, I'm just going to look at this recipe. So what it does is it takes that surface, divides it up into a checkerboard. 6 rows, 6 columns, just like you're playing Battleship. It blows up each of those faces, those cells. It starts to build a surface. Then it takes all of those triangles and it joins them together so that each cell has just one poly surface. So at this join, that's what I'm going to bake into Grasshopper, or bake back into Rhino. Just bake this back on the default layer and hit OK. And I can close Grasshopper for the rest of the term for 367. And I have that thing baked into Rhino. Now, I want to bring this shading system. First of all, I need to offset and give it some thickness, but then I'm going to bring it into Revit, right? So one of the things I'm going to do is just simply get rid of all this Revit reference stuff that I just made. I'll go ahead and select all objects and all these layers that brought in from Revit and just hit delete. All right, there we go. I don't need this surface anymore. I just want the shading components that populated it once. And I'm just going to say offset surface and select all of these. And remember our dimensions are set to feet, 0.03 feet. I don't remember what that is, but maybe we can change that in just a minute. Solid, I'm going to make sure that solid is set to yes. If it's not, I can click it and toggle it. There it's saying no. Now I can say yes, right? Here, distance, I want to reset that distance. I can say 0 feet, 2 inches. There we go. And that is a 0.16667, you know, 0.16 repeated. And go ahead and just hit OK. We'll go ahead and offset those really quickly. Yeah, there we go. Now they have some thickness to them. And I'm ready, once I save this, to then bring it into Revit. Okay? So I'm going to save this to the desktop. Shading components from Rhino to Revit. Farm to table. There we go. All right. We're shading components from Rhino to Revit. Hit save. Now, I don't have to do any kind of weird file types. Revit will allow me to import a 3DM native Rhino file inside. It's really kind of nice that way. So I'm just going to make sure that this thing is saved. It's a 3DM. And I'll go ahead and close Rhino. Woo. See you, Rhino. I'll see you in a little bit. All right. Revit. Here we go. All right. Moving fast because I'm going to get through some things today. Okay? And on Wednesday, we can go back and just redo some things if we need to. But I want to make sure I get this all recorded for you today. All right. Now, we're stuck with the problem of trying to bring the Rhino file in and place it exactly where it needs to go in Revit, right? Okay. Now, you would think it'd be really easy to then pull in the Rhino file since it just opens up a 3DM file natively. Wrong. Again, it's not intuitive. So if you haven't done this before, watch me first, right? Just so you understand that there's multiple steps to the workflow. And then we can go back and do it step by step. All right, so if I go to architecture, component, model in place, right? So what we're going to tell it is we want to go ahead and make a new component in Revit. And when I do that and I select model in place, first of all, it's going to ask me, do you want to match this up with some sort of family, right? And I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to be very generic. I'm just going to say generic family, generic model, okay? And hit OK. And then it'll say, well, what do you want to call this? Do you want to call it generic model, blah, blah, blah. I did this before. Generic model is 1. And I say, yeah, fine, whatever. Okay? Now, what it thinks, and it gives you the interface here, it thinks you want to actually model something in Revit, which some people do it, but I find it to be a huge pain in the rear, right? Like, I couldn't make these folded things in Revit. Like, honestly, like half the so figuring out, again, how to make this work. You can extrude, blend, revolve, sweep. But they're really talking about massings, and you make massings and you tell it how many floors you have, and it starts to divide this thing up. So anyway, I'm going to say insert, but I'm modeling something in place. Insert, then I can import my CAD file. Then you can see the file types. You have DWG, DXF, SAT, STLs, STEP, but then we have Rhino and SketchUp. Those are nice formats. So I'll do Rhino, go to my desktop, find shading components from Rhino to Revit. There we go, the 10:30 p.m. or 10:30 a.m. All right, and then it says, here it is. Are you finished modeling? And when I am, I can hit that green check mark. Now you can see that it's off in height. I think that has something to do with the way I set up my levels with my topo solids, going back and forth between Revit and Form. But I'm really close. So really all I have to do is use the move command, modify, move, and then I can snap and then put it into place, okay? I'm gonna do that before I hit that green check mark, or at least I'm gonna try to do that before I hit the green check mark. Okay, so I can do that in 3D view. I can do that in south elevation view. Let's try the 3D view first, and then we can double check it in south elevation. I noticed a couple things interesting that happens in the elevations. And so I'll show you how you can, again, disable section boxes and scope boxes in elevation, and then start to move where the elevation is actually looking. But anyway, let's go ahead and select this. Let's say move, try to snap to that corner. Let's try to snap it over to this corner. Let's see what happens here. I'm a little off. That's a huge surprise, said no one ever. All right, so let's just try that one more time. Get a little closer. Here we go, move. And it won't let me snap in the place I want to snap, of course. I'll just move it out here. Let's see if I can get it to snap in there. And then again, I can look at, so here, let me just look at and confirm this. I'll go to my south elevation, right? Now my south elevation is pretty rough. Look, it's the first time I've ever opened it up. And you can see that it has that arbitrary scope box from the very beginning still. It's still being sort of sliced up. So I'm just gonna go into my south elevation. You can see, okay, I can't even adjust the settings. So let's go back to the 3D. Let's just double check this, and then when I'm done, I'll hit the plus sign. Let me go to my level 1 floor plan. Let's see if we can see a bit. Oh, here we go. Yeah, in the level 1 floor plan, I can see it much better. And I can move it much closer to my curtain wall as if it's actually attached and clipped on somehow. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I'll just keep moving this into place. Close enough. Let's look at the 3D view. Oh yeah, look at that. And I'm gonna hit the green check mark. Now it thinks that my model is perfect. Oops, let me move my cursor away from that little drop down. There we go, so you can see better. All right, there it is. Now we're shading that south facade a lot better than it was before. All right, but that's how you go back and forth between Rhino and Revit. And the reason I did that, I mean, it's kind of nice to be able to sort of understand where and have them linked up so you can understand where the Rhino model is in the Revit, where the Revit model is in Rhino. But two, it's just going back and forth like that. The workflows aren't necessarily, you wouldn't just dream that up, right? So I wanted to go through it with you. Make sure it's recorded so you can always refer back to it later if you need to, okay? All right, there we are. Look at that. Okay, you guys ready for the last part today? You need maybe a few more minutes? Do you need me to back up or anything or re-show something? Okay. You guys ready to make these things look really beautiful and lovely? Yeah. So first of all, let's go to my elevations and sections. Let's just do a quick spot check. And I like to do this, audit my model just a little bit here. I'm gonna go to level 1 floor plans. You can see that it looks like it's about 4 feet above the finished floor on level 1. It's cutting through walls. It's giving a little bit of change in depth here, but not much. You know, same thing here, right? The line weights could be adjusted a little better, I feel. We can see the topo. We can see some of the relevant detail here. Level 2, okay. And let's go to my section, wherever that is. There it is, building section, section 2. That's the section, right? Yeah, okay. And again, if I look at this section and I select the outline that's around it, when I go back to my levels, I should see where that section's being cut, and I can change where that section's being cut through by just simply dragging that section slice, right? Okay. Okay, let's take a look at those elevations. That south elevation was looking pretty rough. All right, so again, without anything selected, if I'm in an elevation or plan or section drawing, right? In this case, I'm in the south elevation. I get all the sort of settings and properties for this drawing. And what I want to do first is just turn off the crop view, turn off the crop region. Let's go ahead and hit apply. Now we can start to see things a little better. But what you can see is that it's actually cutting a section through our model right now, right? Okay. And so if I zoom out and I select this frame, right? That's a scope box that's on. I don't know why. But let me just go back to, like, let's say my site view. Okay. And you can see that I have some elevation markers. That's my south elevation marker, because I can tell because it's the little symbol and it's pointed north, looking from the south, right? So it's looking at the south face. And you can see exactly where it's located. This is the sort of cut line cutting through my model and then looking at everything else beyond an elevation. And I just simply need to move this back here so that I can actually see the elevation of my building. So now I go to my elevation, south elevation, and I can see everything, right? I can see what I just did to the south facade. I can see the entrance here in the bridge. I need to start to do a little more with my terrain, but I can fix that later, right? Yeah, great. So in other words, we're starting to get some, I think, truly useful elevations. Let's take a look at my east elevation. Okay, that looks like I'm looking at my east elevation. Let's look at the west elevation. West elevation's in sad shape. Let's go back to my site plan. Try to find that west elevation marker. Da-da-da-dum. Here we go. Go to my site. Oh, I see. I'm just getting that box still. Okay. Well, I just need to, damn it, I just need to change where this is aligned. Let's see, move to, remove from sheet. And I just need to select it. Da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum. No clip. Far side, clip, offset. Ooh, maybe that's, no. I'll just, let's see. View template, west, architectural building. Okay, well, let me double check on that and we'll figure out how to fix that one. But I do want to show you a couple of other things, right? So, and maybe we can fix that after we apply these view templates, right? There's 3 files for you to download. This is a third party that I really trust and bought some templates off of and started to customize them. There's view template 10, 11, and 12. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what happens when you open these up. All right, so let's go south elevation. Let's go with the level 1 floor plan. Let's go with the section. I'll turn all this other stuff off for the time being, just so we can sort of see. We have axon, we have elevation, we have plan, we have section. All right, so I still have my Revit file open for the class, and I'm just going to go and open up a new one, a second file. I'm going to say File, Open, And then I'm just going to open up one of these templates. So here's, go to my Revit Assets folder, go to my templates, and there we have View Template 10, 11, and 12. I'll just pick 12. I don't remember which was which, but and then what you'll see is that I have two Revit files open simultaneously. This is how View Template 12 formats things with a sort of blue duotone. It starts to change how patterns are shown. It starts to adjust line weights. It starts to talk about what's opaque and what's transparent. And maybe I'll pick this a different one. Let me try. Yeah, let's see. I'll go ahead and close that. Let me just open up maybe the 12 or something, or maybe 11. 11, here we go. I like 11. There we go. Right. So anyway, what you can do is, when you have a view template, what you can do is you can transfer all those settings to your other file. Right? So this one is showing you how it sort of translates and uses color, line weight, hatch, tone, etc. Right? And so what I can do is I can go back into my other file, and I can say Manage, tab. Again, I would never guess this. And then I could say Transfer Project Standards. Just holding my cursor over it. So I'm back in my other file. I have the template file open, View Template. And I can say Manage, Transfer Project Standards. What it's going to do is it's going to look for any of the other files that you have open. In this case, it's going to say, do you want to copy this from our viewing template 11? And I'm going to say yes, absolutely. Okay. And it's going to say, are you sure? And I'm going to say yes, overwrite. All right. It might take a minute or two. Get the blue spinning wheel. So what it's doing is it's going through the visibility graphics overrides and the graphic display options, sort of global settings as well as for each family, what each of these things looks like in each of these drawings, right? When it's just being looked at in elevation and when it's being cut in section or plan. Okay, I don't care. I'm just going to save this really quickly. All right. It's taking a while. I don't know why. Okay. And so now, when I'm in any of these views, let's say I'm in my 3D view, my Axon view, I can go to View tab, and I could say View Templates. Let's apply a template property. And now you can see here that I have a 3D V11 template, right? And now it's starting to apply it, right? And I can do that for my elevations. View Template. And here's my section and elevation template. And here's my plan. I can do a view template and apply it to my plan. Here's a floor plan template. Okay, and section, blah, 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 blah. Right, so you get the idea here. Apply template. Let's find that section template. All right, we can turn this off now. We can close this bad boy. All right, and so you can go through and begin to use one of these templates if you'd like. And I have, again, I think one is green, one's blue, one's sort of the orange-red, vermilion-red sort of motif. Now, what is it doing behind the scenes? Because I think what's interesting is that you can also begin to further customize these things. So let's go to, let's say, my floor plan, for instance. And let's go to the visibility and graphics override. Okay. What you'll see here is that all of these families have different line types, line weights, patterns, etc. Right? For both when you just view them from away, like an elevation, or when they're being cut, again in plan or section. And the graphic display options as well, you can globally start to turn certain things on or off. Like I can go in here and say cast shadows. Might take it a minute, but now we have shadows, right? So things start to pop a little better. We can do that in 3D as well, right? So you can do this for each one, or you can go back into that template, start to change things around, reapply the templates, okay? Again, just to sort of show you what's possible here, as you start to do some things in Revit to sort of format certain drawings certain ways, right? That you want a certain look. You can use those as view templates later on to reapply to a different project. So you don't lose that sort of design intelligence and that you've been working on, right? Hit apply, right? So we can start to, you can see that there's a ground. It's not actually applying to the. That's kind of weird, right? So we got to fix that. But you get this idea, right? Then suddenly we have a sense of. You can start to drive your own aesthetic, right? And start to play around with line weight. So if I go to visibility, graphics overrides, and let's start looking at doors, floors, walls, roofs. Here's floors, right? We can see that when it's cut, it has a certain line weight. We can override patterns. We can go to override. We can also give it fill as well as some sort of hatching. You know, we can begin to sort of customize these things further. And I just wanted to show you guys these things. You can do this. You can sometimes find them online. Sometimes you have to pay for them. When people go through and actually change all these settings, sometimes they want a little bit of help with, you know, making it available to you if you're interested. But you can certainly do it on your own. Okay? And you can do it for each drawing type. I see it. Each drawing type, but at the same time, you know, you can again do it once and then reapply later. Okay, that's the interesting part, right? So you can make your own templates and begin to apply them as you go.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you could show how to override a new template.
Yeah. So let's say I wanted to change. For instance, I'm in section, and I wanted to change, like, let's say how some of this stuff is being seen, right? Like this roof doesn't have a pochette, and where the ground does, right? So I can go to, let's say, visibility graphics override, and let's find this ground. It's not going to be called ground. It probably might be called like Terra. Let's see, topo solids, right? Okay, so, and topography. So right now the topo solid is showing up black and white. The sort of infill hatch is like kind of way overscaled and looks kind of cheesy. So when I say cut, I can say override. And let's go with the color. Let's change the color. Let's change the weight. And let's see, that's for the lines. I hit OK. And then for a pattern, right, I can say let's use, in the background, let's use just a slight color. Let's use this and then tone it down quite a bit. And then for pattern, I can hit OK and I can say model scale instead of drafting. Oh, I guess it's only going to let us do in drafting scale. But anyway, let's see. And let's go with wherever this, here we go, Earth. Let's double click on it. We can change its properties. So we could say import scale 1, sure. Let's go 45 degree. Let's just go custom. Orient to view, okay, blah, 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 blah. I should be able to change the colors. And I'm not sure why. Maybe I just make my own new one and say, call it Earth. There should be a way to change the colors. I'm not sure why I can't find it. But let me just hit OK and let's see what it looks like now when I hit apply. It's starting to change a little bit. So we changed that line. And now what we need to do is the background's going to be pattern is going to be solid fill with this color. And then the pattern on the foreground will be this fill. Oh, here's where we change the color. Okay. Doi. Okay. Hit OK, hit apply. Now it's starting to take shape. So we can begin to, there's another way to do this. And that is I want to just do the model scale. And that way it sort of doesn't size, but we can actually set a true size. But for some reason, it's not letting me take care of that right here. I'm not sure why. Right, okay. Hit apply, cut line styles override. And then I might go back here and say, do I want to crop the view? No, hit apply. View template. And these things aren't all perfect, right? So you're starting to see, like, for instance, one thing I noticed in the floor plan, for whatever reason, my walls, it's filling in the windows. And then my wall reason that's not really reading well to me. What's interesting about it is like when I'm seeing things in elevation, like let's say the bottom sill of a window, or the top of my half wall that doesn't even come up to 4 feet, is that it almost looks like it's rendered like it's being cut. I find that a little confusing, so I probably want to go back and change some of these things, right? But needless to say, we could. We're ready to export, right? So we're ready to export some PDFs. And again, the easiest way to do that is simply go to each of these drawings that you have. So I'm gonna, let's say first floor plan. I'm gonna say export, DWG. All right. And it's gonna ask me, okay, are you sure this is what's gonna look like? I'm just gonna go ahead and say next. Right. Oh, you know what? Let's try PDF. File, export, and where's, oh yeah, create a PDF file. PDFs can be really nice. All right, so then where do you want to save it? Annoyingly, it doesn't want to ask me that. It wants me to sort of, here we go, save it to the desktop. Okay, file name, and I'll say first floor plan. Visible portion, current window, selected view sheets. I'm going to say current window. And let's see, you can also give it a scale, or you can say fit to page and give it, let's say, page size. Scale wise, how do we, should be easy enough to make this 8 scale. Where is it though? Zoom, 0% of the size, use sheet size. Why does it never show me the right settings when I'm in front of everybody else? Damn, every time. Well, anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and export this. And really quickly, let's see what it looks like. Let me export the PDF. Okay. So if you wanted 8 scale plans or 16 scale, right, I think that's really important. We double check that. I think I'll just have to Google it. I'm not going to like make you guys wait on me to sort of try to find the right settings, but let's just double check and let's see if the PDF looks good. There it is. No, that's not it. Where did it save the PDF? Export PDF. Come on now. Yeah, to the desktop. Oh, here it is. First floor plan. Yeah, there it is. Right. So now it's a PDF. Should be vectorized, so you can bring it into Illustrator if you want, adjust line weights further if you need to, or start to crop it, add a mask and things like that, clipping, start composing things into a poster again, etc. Right? It's a PDF. It should also work with Canva. It should work with Illustrator and Design, depending on what you're up to, right? In your portfolio versus poster, versus sharing it with a teammate or whatever it is, right? Let's do the same thing with an axon. Why not? This shadow that's being projected onto a hypothetical ground plane is really bugging the shit out of me. Let me just quickly, it's bugging me. Shadows, cast shadows, show ambient shadows. I wonder why it's doing that. It's so weird. I like the casting shadows part, but I just don't understand why it's, so I'd have to fix that, but suffice to say, right, look at that. Maybe I leave my clipping plane on, but maybe I turn the section box visibility. I'll select that section box and turn and say hide that element. And then I'm free to sort of then go ahead and start to export another PDF of my axon, right? Okay. One last thing I'm going to do, and that is I'm going to turn that scope box off for a minute. None, apply. There we go. Section box, apply. Okay. I might turn that section box and scope box off. Because our next step on Wednesday, we'll export this to Twinmotion and start to render the crap out of it. Sound good? Start to add materials, look at the lighting. First and foremost, if you're using a PC, you can establish a link between Revit and Twinmotion that I can't because I have I'm running Windows on Parallels. Long story short, like Parallels doesn't allow software and Windows to see MacBook Pro's video card, and that's a requirement to load Twinmotion in Windows. So I'm loading it in Mac OS, which runs great. So anyway, because of that discrepancy, I'll be exporting as an OBJ and then importing things in as an OBJ. But I'll show sort of both examples, right, to get you going. Make sure you have Twinmotion downloaded and installed, that you have a username, like you've made an account for Twinmotion, and that the same username is the same one that you use for Autodesk, so the same unlv.edu, right? So that way you can actually link up and establish a connection between your Revit model and Revit and Twinmotion if you want, okay? But what we'll do is we'll look at the environment in Twinmotion. We'll start to go through the multi-lister and start to group things up accordingly if they're not separated on levels, because when I bring these in from as an OBJ, I'll have a bunch of loose components. I'll just start to make my own folders. But that way, then we can start to say, let's select all this steel at once, and let's just make it all like, weathered or painted or Coritan or whatever it is, what other kind of steel you want. Same with the floor, same with the walls, same with the glazing, same with the, whatever, right? So we'll do that probably first, at least to start off with, before then we start to paint the terrain with conifers and rocks and ground cover. All right, so what you'll find is that especially when we're out in the wilderness of Mount Charleston, it's quite easy with a few clicks to start to basically blast this stuff with vegetation, so it just looks real. All right? And then we'll start talking about adjusting for time of day, time of year. If we need to go back and do anything else that we covered today, we can also do that first thing on Wednesday. Again, I have office hours on Wednesday before class. Thursday, I'm leaving country. I'll be traveling on business, so but I'll be back like, I don't know, they say late Sunday night, but it'll probably be more like early Monday morning, like somewhere between midnight and 2. So then I'll be hitting the ground running with you guys 10 a.m. Monday. I'll be there for office hours at 9, all right? But I won't be checking email much over the weekend. So try some things out. Try to keep up. Don't forget, on Wednesday, if you miss something, just come to class with it. Very first thing, and ask the question. I'm happy to go through this again quickly. All right, we good? We're there. Look at that. So we're making pretty drawings, and now we're going to make some pretty perspectives with some atmospherics and light and materials soon. Okay. It's going to bug me if I don't actually export this PDF, so I'll just do it. I'll delete it later, but it doesn't matter. Let's call this Axon. Proceed with export. Yes, just proceed with export, dude. Okay. Steven, did you have a question? You guys are packing up. We have a few minutes. Did you save your running? Yes. Okay. So, well, you don't want that. Let's see. So go ahead and cancel it. Okay. So the first step is to go to our section tab. And go to component, model in place. Select generic models, just put it across. Thanks for letting me know. Surprised by how few people are here today. Man, they're fucked this week, man. Like the people, I'm sorry. I keep dropping F-bombs. People who are not here today, but they're also going to miss Wednesday. Holy God. Like, I understand that there's like a construction site visit Wednesday for some of you in C-Tech. Okay. Boy, they're just pushing all my buttons, I guess.